life. And that has permeated down through the administration. And the reality is that internally, if you dissent right now from the orthodoxy of the government, if you don't have total fealty to the company line, you're out, you're fired, or you have to resign. And externally, if you don't have total fealty to the administration, you are an activist, an agitator, a domestic terrorist. That dynamic is the characteristic of a lot of countries that are not happy places around the world.
Exactly.
John, I just want to go back to the part of Bovino's description where he just kept emphasis on the 9mm semi-automatic weapon that I believe is a pretty standard weapon for law enforcement to carry, for people who have a concealed carry permit, and, just really harping on the fact that he had, 2 loaded magazines. Did that strike you as outside of the ordinary for something for DHS to be really harping on? Are they just focusing on building this case that he was charging forward with the weapon?
Well, again, listen, for whatever reason, again, I just want to emphasize this. It's really important. I've never seen after an incident like this, everyone rush out to say this was a justified shooting before the facts are in. And I don't know if Bovino, it's quite possible, as I mentioned, when Ms. Good was shot, immediately after these incidents, leaders like Bovino, like the secretary, like the president, are getting initial reports. You don't need to work in government very long to know that those very initial reports are often wrong. And that just tells you how irresponsible it is to rush out there. So there is a chance, to be fair, that this was just a highly irresponsible press conference based on inaccurate information that was getting fed to him, before he had a chance to review the videos or before the dust settled and the facts come in. But of course, the gun is, if you are setting out to make a case that this was a defensible shooting, the fact that there is a gun is obviously the most important piece of that, right? And I will say that the fact that he was carrying a gun does make it increases the risks, right? Increases the risks that the officers are going to feel in that moment that there is a credible threat. But again, we really don't know what happened here. We know it's not the version that's being said, that this was, this was a clear self-defense where they're trying to disarm an individual who was approaching them with, intending to kill everybody. But we need to let the dust settle here and let there be a real investigation as it relates to this incident and find out exactly what happened, why there was a gun on site, and also break down these videos, which are very confusing to watch, and see, was he disarmed prior to the shooting, exactly how all this went down.
But John, what we're hearing...
Yeah.
But John, what we're hearing is that this administration is going to have DHS investigate itself. So are we ever going to get that information?
Probably not.
I think this goes back to what the professor was just saying about the credibility gap, right? The problem here is, especially when you announce these investigations, the results in advance. I do think DHS is capable of having an investigation with independence and integrity. I know during the department that we were not afraid to discipline officers when they made mistakes. We were not afraid to the government was not afraid to prosecute officers if they made serious mistakes that crossed the line. It happened all the time. The problem here, though, is the credibility. How can anyone trust this government anymore when the government rushes out and provides these alternative narratives of the facts which appear contradicted, right, by the multiple videos, and rushes in a judgment? And I guess, again, amongst all the many reasons why you don't rush out there is because there is going to be an investigation and you want the results to be viewed as credible. But when you rush out and say this was 100% justified, nobody's going to believe the results of the investigation if that is the conclusion it reaches.
All right, James, John, please stick around. We're going to squeeze in a quick break. When we come back, we're going to bring you the very latest statement from the family of Alex Preddy. You're watching The Weekend Primetime on MS Now.
I got a question. How come with all these different events that's happened now, basically on open screen TV, and in one way, I was going to say, well, we didn't have this problem until social media come about. But in reality, we actually had this problem ever since media has come about, ever since the good old American camera got developed. Because now we can video camera the events that happen, regardless whether it be Waco, Texas, or the Oklahoma bombing, or Ruby Ridge, or the event that happened down in Atlanta pertaining to the event down there with the abortion clinic. We can video these things now and determine for ourselves, and whether or not who's wrong, who's right, whose credibility is questionable versus not. How come hadn't somebody done already introduced somebody like Interpole coming down here and being a referee and making a non-partial investigation choice? That's my question. I mean, if we got all these different biased opinions and biased bad publicity on one side or the other, even though we all know what we believe that we've seen, how come we haven't got somebody that's like a third party, etc., coming in and really analyzing the situation carefully and saying, this is how the cow ate the cabbage? This guy, from what I understand, was a young intern or something like that. And ordinarily, interns are not violent people. They're in their profession to want to help life and save life and sustain life. To think that this guy was just going to come onto the scene as they was promoting and going to do a violent act in taking down a bunch of officers is actually against the persona of just exactly who he is. Because if you'll profile nurses, doctors, interns, people that's in that profession, they're not in that profession to kill people. They're in the profession to want to help people, to save life, not take life. So it really goes up against their whole concept of what they're trying to label this guy as, towards him being a vicious, maybe a vigilante or something, going to come out there and start a shoot up corral type deal against all these federal officers. It don't match the profile. I'll put it that way. I'm not saying it's not a possibility, because there's always a possibility that anything could happen, even offset from the profiling, but it don't match the profiling. And to think that those officers are trained, that once they get somebody down on the ground, one guy gets one arm, another one gets the other arm, one guy gets the leg, another guy gets the other leg, and they pursue in wrestling the suspect down. Same way with the guy that got in front of the vehicle. I'm pretty sure that woman that took off was not thinking ahead of time that she possibly had somebody that was at the corner of her bumper that would give the appearance, if she gunned it, that she was trying to run over that guy. She wasn't trying to run over that guy. I'll never believe that she was trying to run over that guy, because she never, not one time, turned that steering wheel to the left-hand side. Not even an inch, as far as I could tell. The wheel never changed the direction of which it was at. And for somebody to shoot one time is one thing, but for somebody to shoot 3 times, put 3 bullets in somebody, and you're supposed to be a professional? No, I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. Now here's that individual right here.
Alex is clearly not holding a gun when attacked by Trump's murdering and cowardly ICE thugs. He had his phone in his right hand, and his empty left hand is raised above his head while trying to protect the woman ICE just pushed down, all while being pepper sprayed. Please get the truth out about our son. He was a good man. Thank you. We are back now with James Sample and former acting ICE director under President Biden, John.
That must have been one or both parents that was speaking in defense of their son.
You know, trying to pursue accountability in this case, and we were talking about this a little bit in the commercial break about how Minnesota will have the final say about what happened today. And we've been hearing guests on this program and elsewhere using the word cover-up to describe how the federal government is.
It seems like public opinion don't mean nothing no more.
Conceal what happened or never get to the bottom of it. What actual legal recourse is there for the family of Alex Preddy and perhaps for Governor Walz in Minnesota to actually hold these people, these officials who shot him, accountable?
Well, as John said in the prior segment, the best avenue for relief would be a federal government investigation by the Department of Justice's Department of Civil Rights Division, which would be standard practice up until very recently, and then for the federal government and federal agencies to pursue claims on their behalf and against the officer responsible or officers responsible. Those avenues seem to be foreclosed for all practical purposes. The next step would be for state and local officials to try and hold the individual responsible. There are some really, really significant hurdles in the way of that as a general matter, and that's not specific to this administration. It's not specific to any one particular party. Frankly, it's a 50-year project of the Supreme Court to make it exceptionally difficult for state officials to hold federal officials accountable, even for violations of federal law. There's a case 50-some years ago called Bivens v. 6 unknown narcotics agents, and that was a case in which the federal government was subject to remedies for violating the federal Constitution.
Caught on the carpet.
And, you know, if you think about it, the federal Constitution was intended to be a limit on the federal government.
That's right.
The founders of our country were deeply cognizant of the risk of strong, centralized, and dare I say, authoritarian government figures.
That's right.
But we have gotten so far away from that, and part of it is the need to protect law enforcement officers who are doing their job and who sometimes are in difficult situations and make split-second calls. But we've gotten, the pendulum on that has swung so far that the mountain for Alex Preddy's family and the mountain for Governor Walz or Attorney General Ellison, it is extremely tall, and it's taller than it needs to be in a large part because Congress doesn't want to step in and create a right of action.
See?
John, I want to bring you into this conversation.
Not doing their
And
job.
Just to clarify, we know you worked for, you worked as acting ICE director under Barack Obama. One reason why accountability is important in cases like this is not just to get justice for the victim, but to prevent future potential cases like this, to disincentivize agents from behaving similarly if in fact they are found to have violated the law here or have used excessive force, as it certainly appears to be the case just from these videos. We don't know for sure. Could you speak to that additional rationale for accountability? Like, if in fact nothing comes of this, if DHS does its own investigation and exonerates their own agents, what do you think will happen the next time that agents go out, whether from CBP or ICE, and encounter protesters?
Look, I think what's critical about the investigation is that there are multiple questions to answer here. First of all, was the use of lethal force justified, right? Is this something that does need to be referred to?
No, it was not. I don't think so. Now, if that guy had a phone in his hand versus a gun, no, it was not.
How did we get here? How did we get to that moment where we were, why did we take down, Mr. Preddy? Why were we arresting him? Why did we interact? Could we have done that differently? Was that consistent with our training and our protocols? Did we use de-escalation, which is part of the use of force rules at DHS prior to deciding we're going to go hands-on and use that force, right? So I think that this is a critical opportunity for the department, not just to, make that critical determination of whether or not a crime occurred here, but also, are there things we need to be doing differently in terms of our deployments, our training, so that we minimize the chances of that? That's why that investigation is so critical, not just for that criminal referral decision, but for everything else that can try to prevent something like this from ever happening again.
John, you just heard the family's statement, that they even had to release that statement less than 12 hours after their son was killed by federal agents, and to just put it out there with courage, saying they're lying, this is what happened is not the way they say it was. You were also general counsel at Department of Homeland Security. How much does the family coming out and immediately negating the agency's story damage their credibility?
Well, again, I think what the damage of the credibility is that rush to judgment, that rush before you really have all the facts in terms of providing a narrative. And again, I'm struck by when Ms. Good was shot. Just quickly, Tom Homan gave an interview with CBS News. This was prior to, I think, him knowing that what the secretary had said or what the vice president was saying. And he was pressed on, what do you think of the shooting? Was it a proper shooting? And his immediate reaction was, it would be irresponsible of me to say the investigation is just commencing. Because that is, in my experience, what everybody with any law enforcement experience would say. Because there is no other answer you can give. Those videos tell us a lot, but they don't tell us everything. And I just don't understand why the department would shoot itself in the foot and again kind of build that credibility gap. But if I may, just quickly, of course, we keep hearing as well, this is about the worst of the worst. And then we see what happened earlier this week with the 5-year-old. And when you look at the data and you see that 73% of the people in ICE custody have no criminal convictions whatsoever, and only 5% have ever been, convicted of any sort of crime that could be deemed a violent crime. This credibility gap is growing. And I would say one last thing, it's not just a political impact it can have on the administration, but it's going to undermine the ability of DHS to do its job in the future. It is destroying its ability to form partnerships with state and locals. It is destroying its ability to get valuable information. It can get real criminals off the street, and it is just undermining its effectiveness overall.
James, before we go, I want to ask you a quick question with our last few seconds. If you were to advise protesters going out on the streets in Minnesota right now, are their First, Second, and Fourth Amendments, their constitutional rights intact right now?
No.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even if the Insurrection Act is invoked, the Insurrection Act doesn't negate anything in the Constitution. It's an exception to another statute called the Posse Comitatus Act. Constitutional rights are ironclad, and as long as individuals are exercising those constitutional rights without intruding on the constitutional rights and the privacy and well-being and safety of others, they are absolutely on firm ground.
Thank you. John Sandweg, thank you. James, you're still here with us. Up next, we're going to be joined by Republican Congressman Kevin Kiley from California to discuss the latest deadly shooting by federal law enforcement in Minneapolis.
They're not on firm ground pertaining to what's going on right now and how it's going on. And people such as myself can validate that in seeing how the system itself is broken to the degree that it don't protect us. Number one, it promised to give us safety and protection, and it has failed. Whenever it comes to our privacy rights, it has forfeited those promises too as well, because today, now because of the internet, people knows more about everybody than ever before. Now, granted, I'll put a lot of the emphasis upon the fact that the reason for that is because of the internet, is because of social media. But wasn't that the primary purpose for us voting in various legislations so that we could have our privacy? Isn't that the reason why that people agree to sign off on the HIPAA Act pertaining to not allowing for doctors to share, or hospitals to share, or clinics to share information with other clinics or other doctors? It's all big. As far as I'm concerned, it's a fraud. It's a fraud in how that they have handled themselves in protecting the American people. It's been a fraud as far as them violating their commitments as far as our privacy. It's a fraud pertaining to how that they throw things to one side or the other in benefit of the subject matter of whatever happened, similar towards them not telling the whole truth about what went on in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas. And then on top of that, they didn't tell the whole truth pertaining to what went on with the Oklahoma bombing. And it's almost like pulling hen's teeth, in a sense, towards trying to get the whole truth and not the much of the truth, even though that's supposed to be what our system is based around. Our system is supposed to be around the whole truth. And there's no doubt, I've said this before, whenever you're taking on such of a task like this, there's going to be mistakes. Regardless whether they're intentional or non-intentional, there's going to be mistakes. The same way that they sat down and analyzed whenever you're going to build a skyscraper building. That they got analysts and insurance companies that have sat down and say, well, there's going to be probably 5 fatalities and 47 close calls and losing either hands, legs, or etc. limbs, and there's going to be 150 minor cases pertaining to cuts and injuries. You got people that have done case studies on this stuff, regardless whether it be a 50-story building or a 100-story building, regardless whether it be a big bridge or a little bridge, regardless whether it be a Hoover Dam or whatever. You got people that have sat down and put a pencil to this, the same way as you got people that will sit down and look at the community and look at the youth and look at the elderly and look at the who's working and who isn't working and saying, okay, is this going to be beneficial for us to put in a business here pertaining to a factory that's going to facilitate, let's say, 1,500 people and have 2 shifts or 3 shifts? These people aren't going to make these type of investments unless they pretty well know what's going on. Now, granted, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be unforeseeables. But we keep seeing this pattern again and again happening to the United States civilian life. And you tend to wonder, do they really take us for all a bunch of fools? Because obviously that's what the people in some of these other bigger ordeals have done. And to think that the media thinks that they're so sly that they can pull the wool over people's eyes like this, it's preposterous. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. And I've recently just got to accuse my investigator of that, because the type of investigations that he does is basically similar towards an ambulance chaser versus somebody that's out here trying to investigate a homicide, or somebody that's investigating a let's say a crime accident, or somebody investigating a plane accident. There's different levels of different types of investigations for different people, as well as detective work.
Imagine, at least behind the scenes, Republicans are talking quite a lot about what's happening in Minneapolis. But I want your assessment of what transpired there this morning. The messages, the statements that we've heard from this administration do not appear to line up with the video, at least the video that has been released to the public by this point. What do you believe happened this morning in Minneapolis?
Well, we won't know, I think, the answer to that question until there's been an investigation where all...
You know, AI has become so good. Who's to say that AI couldn't recreate the situation with those body cameras with them cops and actually put a gun in that guy's hand? It's got to the point that we don't know who to believe. We don't know what to trust. We don't know who to trust. AI has helped to create an anarchy type environment on this planet. And it's only going to get worse if we don't get a hold of it, if we don't get a handle on it.
Us need to find a way to bring down the temperature. And I think that, you're seeing a lot of provocative rhetoric that isn't helping the situation. No one has a right to interfere.
Who's the provocative rhetoric coming from?
I think there's a lot of provocative rhetoric, frankly, coming, on all sides. But I will say that, no one has a right to interfere with federal immigration operations, no matter how much you might disagree with the nature of those operations. And I do think it'd be helpful if we had more coordination with local law enforcement as well, just to assure the safety of the public.
Is interference what we saw on video? He appears to be filming, which is legal. We have a lawyer here at the table who can confirm that. Have you seen a video where Alex Preddy interferes with their operations in Minneapolis?
I've seen one version of the video. I'm not going to pass judgment on what happened based upon the snapshot that I saw. I also am just kind of getting up to speed on this. I've been at the funeral for my colleague who we sadly lost, Doug Lamalfa, until which took up most of the day. So I haven't seen all the videos that are out there. But I think part of the problem is that when people see these clips and then form snap judgments based upon what one particular angle without accounting for all of the facts and the circumstances. But I will say, absolutely, categorically, that we can't have this continue to happen. So we need that everyone on all sides to figure out a way to bring down the volume.
It was a pile-on. That's what it was. It was a pile-on. They use that type of terminology in football games. A pile-on. And that's exactly what happened here with my brother and I whenever I first come back here in 2014. We had various people from this community that was coming out of the woodwork deliberately either provoking or antagonizing or sabotaging or vandalizing our property. While the law up there in Dresden, Tennessee said idly by and allowed for it to happen.
armed and seem to have a purpose of conducting interference and harming officers. So
knowing good and well that the only reason why that Juby was being attacked was because of the material that Juby had already put out to the public prior to Juby coming back in 2014. And Juby is me, the guy talking in behind the camera.
They've said, are you telling me that you think that the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, can actually investigate itself in a current administration where they've already come out and said this guy's an armed terrorist or domestic terrorist, called him a would-be assassin, saying he had a gun when the video clearly shows that he did not? Are you saying that this Department of Homeland Security can investigate that fairly?
Well, first, as I mentioned, Congress is going to be doing an oversight hearing where we'll be able to hear from folks directly at the top of all of these agencies.
It's gotten to the point that we can't trust them. Look at some of the moves that they've made in the past 5 years since COVID hit.
Within the agency for assessing these sort of things, and the evidence, I think, will eventually become public, and people will be able to judge for themselves once the investigation has been conducted.
Congressman, as Eamon mentioned, Eamon and Antonia had mentioned, it appeared that the person who was killed, Alex Preddy, was filming. There was maybe a gun that was taken from him. From the videos, it does not appear that he was brandishing it, that he was holding it. You can kind of see that it looks like they took something out of maybe his back. We don't know. We spoke earlier this evening with Vermont Democratic Representative Becca Balint who's on the House Judiciary Committee with you, by the way, about the comments that we have heard from Greg Bovino, from Kristi Noem, suggesting that the very fact that he had a weapon means that he was a domestic terrorist or otherwise was out to cause harm. I want you to take a listen.
He had a telephone and pepper spray.
Like to see Republicans in Congress who serve with me, who are constantly talking about Second Amendment rights. This is your time, folks. This is your time to stand up for the American people. And I just have to say, they are apologists and they are collaborators, and they have to stand up for us because right now we have sick bastards in charge.
So, Congressman, do you think...
Well, it's not only that, but we have a sick society because keep in mind, we're dealing with a society that was rooting on fights and people basically getting their lives destroyed on a particular show that was being filmed up in Chicago for years and years and years. Yeah. I'd never seen anything like it. I knew that whenever I was witnessing that stuff in the 90s, that we got a society out of control over here in America that's willing to stand up and root while somebody gets their brains beat out or while somebody exploits somebody by cheating on their wife or cheating on their husband while the people are rooting for it. That is a very, very sick environment, a sick people that's willing to do that pertaining to the Springer show.
Amendment covers. The Second Amendment does not protect that sort of thing. And I think that, in these tragedies that we've seen, people are doing things that are illegal, that they're not supposed to be doing, that are disruptive, that create dangerous situations for officers and the public, and that create risk. But what we don't want is it to escalate to the point at which, people are losing their lives. And so I think
people are, and I'll agree with that statement he just made. There are certain people in the group that purposely push things to the edge of the elevation of the envelope, right up to the edge to where they're not actually giving the appearance of breaking the law, but it's in a very, very provocative way towards provoking them officers, and them officers winding up doing something radical. It just so happens they done a pile on that guy. That guy was not. I mean, regardless of what may he been saying verbally to him, that did not give them the right to kill that man. Just like I don't think it gave that guy the right to put 3 bullets in that woman's chest just because she decided that she was going to try to not cooperate with the law and get the heck out of there.
That is what is making gun owners who happen to have a gun on their body but aren't brandishing it less safe. Do you agree with that? Do you think that it actually, any encroachment on our freedom, that this is actually happening right now?
It is happening. And it
Well,
does.
You're hearing a lot of arguments on both sides as to who is to blame for all of this. The reality is you have seen, statements from political leaders in Minnesota that have kind of thrown fuel on the fire and have led to these sort of confrontations. Now, if you want to argue the other side and say that ICE is overreaching or that this can be done in a way that's more de-escalatory or that there can be better training, more safeguards.
It's profiling what it is. They profiled that guy. They seen a gun on his side, and they automatically assumed that with this guy here, he's a danger. He's a danger.
For body cams.
Even though he only had a phone in one hand and pepper spray in the other.
I would like to do is see both sides come together and say, look, we cannot have episodes like this continue to happen in our country. So where can we find the common ground that we need to get this situation under control?
Congressman Kevin Kiley, thank you.
They profiled that guy based off of what that they was looking at.
Clergy member arrested at Minneapolis St. Paul International.
And in addition to that, the other guy walked up to him and shoved him. I mean, pushed him right in the chest to the degree that he almost lost his balance. And then from then on, it was a pile-on. It was a pile-on. They purposely went after that guy in a provocative way, hoping that they would piss him off. And they did. They did. They pissed him off. But still, again, even though they pissed him off and even though he was saying whatever that he was saying to them, did not give them the right to use lethal action. And that's what they did. And this is the environment that's being created right in front of our very eyes. And if we don't have enough sense to speak up about what we're seeing and hearing, then eventually it's going to be coming near a neighborhood near you. And it could actually be you. Just like it's been me in the past in what various Secret Service agents has done. Beginning in Madison County in 1989. Whenever they decided to confiscate something from the ministry that they had no business in confiscating. But the people that do hear my story are probably listening or watching my case being presented to the public in a sniggering type form. They're not basically having empathy or sympathy towards what I've went through. And I'm finding out the same thing with my so-called investigator. That's basically an ambulance chaser going out here working for workman's comp, going after people that I've tried to explain to him, hey, look at the situation at hand towards what the people have been forced to have to deal with towards all the jobs leaving America, 90,000 factories. These people, they may not be totally disabled in their back or may not be totally disabled in one hand or one arm or whatever, but they're trying to do the best that they can, and they realize that they're just fighting a lost cause, and because of it, they're trying to survive. But this guy's still backing the rich man, backing the people that's got the money. Well, isn't that what our state legislators does whenever they go up there and lobby? And they got all this money and they're throwing all this cash in front of them? They're not worried about justice. They're not worried about fairness. They're only worried about force. And their force comes from money, just like the guy that I'm talking about that's supposedly my friend. He has been infatuated with silver for the past year because silver has decided to take a break up. Well, I mentioned to him just the other day, I said, silver broke $100 deluge. It broke $100 deluge, over $100 an ounce now for silver. I go, do you not have enough insight to see where that's going to affect the consumer, that eventually, even though silver, that's going to make telephones go up, that's going to make electronics go up, that's going to make any other kind of component that you got to use silver or these precious elements on, that's just going to be handed down to the consumer? Can you not see that? And in a way, he kind of agreed with it, but he said, well, I don't care, but it's my time to make my money, and I'm making my money off this silver. Really? Off of the backs of the consumer, off the backs of your so-called it's sick. It is sickening. It's pathetic. That's all I can say. It's pathetic.
You're on the front lines.
This is a tragic moment today in Minnesota after yesterday, which felt like a real coming together of our state and of our communities to say that we can no longer tolerate this federal occupation. And I hope and pray
Can't trust them.
Yesterday and today together will become to be a turning point for this entire nation.
You can't trust your local authorities. You can't trust your state authorities, and you cannot trust your federal authorities. I've seen it and experienced it hand on hand and identified what that they've tried to hide or cover up or make up or etc.
Filming these operations and trying to expose what is happening.
And now I got a dead brother and a dead son on account of it.
Protest again.
I will definitely be back out protesting and continue.
I got a dead brother because of what went on in the direction that it went on here in 3 consecutive years. I got a dead son because the way that the public turned against me and my religion pertaining to the anointing that fell upon my life, that because they boycotted me the way that they didn't just boycott me, they boycotted my whole family. As a matter of fact, I had certain elements of my family that turned against me. And there for a long, long time, so did my son. Until finally his eyes was open, until he finally started reading the scriptures and understanding and interpreting the scriptures the same as I was interpreting them, and said, you know what, maybe my dad isn't a fraud. Maybe my dad isn't crazy. Maybe my dad isn't all the things that they was trying to accuse my dad of being. And he was coming around. He was coming around. And the bottom line is he was seeking to better his family in an adventure towards going out, picking up a piece of equipment, and died in doing so. And died in doing so.
And those are real fears, and the rhetoric of terms like domestic terrorist. You know, the number one weapon of authoritarian figures is fear. And so I think the answer to the first part of your question
tyranny.
Is that what the
We're dealing
Reverend
with
did
tyranny.
yesterday and what thousands and thousands of people did yesterday, below zero temperatures. There were basically, I mean, I'm sure there were little tiny incidents here and there, but basically no major incidents yesterday. And people were out there being heard in a meaningful, correct.
That proves the point that democracy can prosper and can be vital to our way of life. It proves the point that people sticking together can overcome hurdles and obstacles.
Sanitized in the rearview mirror. We look at things very differently now vis-a-vis the civil rights movement, vis-a-vis the women's rights movement, suffrage, for example. So in a sense, we've been in these moments before, and the thousands and thousands of people who were out yesterday in Minneapolis, including the Reverend, they did it right.
As they said, it's the same old crap, it's just a different pile. It's the same old crap, it's just a different pile. The pile that they was dealing with in the 60s, the pile that they was dealing with pertaining to women's lib, those was different piles at different times. Now we're dealing with what we're dealing with now. But if you get to looking and studying the heart of it towards just exactly what was going on pertaining to the bullies, pertaining to those that wasn't willing to bend, bow, or bow regarding giving all people the fairness. Whenever you get to looking at our songs pertaining to from sea to shining sea, you can take a lot of those songs and throw them out the back door ever since the attorneys and the big conglomerates come over here to America and decided to make a stand. There's nothing fair about our laws. There's nothing fair about our Constitution. They'll lean towards saying that they are, but they're not, and you know that they're not. Just like whenever we can see things happening right in front of our eyes and they still want to persuade the public in a different direction. Come on.
Horrific consequences.
James, what responsibility do regular protesters who are not trained officers have to be de-escalating? We keep on hearing this word de-escalate. We heard it from Representative Kiley before, that both sides need to bring down the temperature. I agree. High temperatures.
How can you de-escalate if you're bogus? How can you de-escalate if you're the aggressor? That's what I'm saying. What this administration is doing right now is creating more of a problem than a solution to it. There has to be another way to go about doing this, pertaining to all the illegals that's come over here. I don't know what that way may be, but there has to be a more sensible, more passionate, compassionate way about doing this, rather than tearing families apart and attacking their own sovereignty here in the United States.
And the ICE agents who are there in militarized gear and masks are not trained for de-escalation, and you're seeing the result of that.
All right, James Sample and Reverend Maria Tolgard, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate your insights this evening. We're back in a moment.
This is going to do it for me. Good luck for all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors towards which way we go from this moment on.